Staying motivated is one of the hardest parts of learning a language. And one reason is because it can be really difficult to find accountability. So that means some sort of external force that kind of motivates you and convinces you to learn a language on the days when you don't really want to or you don't feel like it's worth it. So in this video, I'm going to talk about language apps for accountability. So this is a few different ways that language apps can help you to stay motivated by keeping you accountable in your language learning goals. And we're going to do this in the order of easiest to find and easiest to ignore and most difficult to find, but generally most effective if you put the time and energy in. So the most common and easiest to find language apps for accountability are those with daily notifications. Now these daily notifications are in pretty much every language app on the planet at this point, and there's a reason for that. A, it's really easy for people who create language apps. They're also pretty generic because they all basically say the same thing. This can be as simple as, hey, it's 8 a.m. or whatever time you set it for. Remember to study insert language here. Or it can be something as aggressive as a Duolingo owl threatening you, which everybody loves. Now, a lot of people love this notification because it's all they really need to remind their brain. It's like, oh yeah, I should do something. And that's perfectly fine. That's great. That's excellent. However, this can also be really easy to ignore, and this is my brain. It can be very easy to see that notification and just kind of swipe it away and be like, I don't want to deal with that right now. It's not gonna happen right now. I'll deal with it later. And then you forget it. And in my case, I generally find that this is indicative of a larger problem. So basically, like, the accountability is fine, but the strategy that I'm using is not fine because I'm avoiding it and saying like, oh no, it's just not keeping me accountable enough. No, I know for me personally, it's because there is something deeper going on. And that is a whole other video. But for many types of brains, all it takes is one little notification and bam, your motivation is back. And that's great. You can do this with Duolingo. You can do this with all sorts of really fun language apps that keep you motivated through its, pretty colors and like really satisfying, like sense of accomplishment, daily streaks, all that jazz. And there's plenty of those. But like I said, because this little pinch of accountability is so simple, it can also be really easy to ignore. And this is when we go a step farther into our accountability and we get a little bit closer to real life human poking us and saying like, hey, get your butt to this language learning resource or else you're not gonna learn a language, I guess. And this is what I like to call a more asynchronistic community. So there are selections of language apps which connect you to real human beings, but it's not like a face-to-face. Like, they don't have to be available at the exact time because it's not a conversation. But at the same time, you do get real life feedback and real life, you do get a notification or some sort of email or something saying like, hey, you have a response to your submission or you have some sort of feedback or any number of things, but you can still go about your day and like come back to it when you're ready, but it's personalized. So what can this look like? Let's say, for example, you're using SpeechLink. So if you're not familiar, link below in the description for my review of SpeechLink, but SpeechLink is great for pronunciation. That's its focus. If you want to improve your pronunciation in a foreign language, I recommend SpeechLink because basically what you have is you can have a word, a phrase, or you can even do a free speak or any number of options, all of which I show you in my blog post review, by the way. You speak the language into your phone and you have the option to submit it to a pronunciation coach. And within 24 hours, the pronunciation coach sends you back with it's great or needs feedback and, kind of repeats what it is that you're saying. And it gives you that asynchronistic response to help keep you accountable and remind you like, oh yeah, you did this thing, here's a few pointers, or if not, great job, you did awesome. You can also do something like Yask, which is very similar, except it's generally not professional trained coaches. It's just people who speak your target language natively, and they can come through and they can listen to your pronunciation and correct you, or your writing, they can correct your writing. Same thing with Busuu, same thing with Polyglot, same thing with all sorts of language learning apps that do this kind of like you can submit your attempts at the language and have somebody else correct it. And generally the idea is that you're also correcting other people. It's part of the whole community aspect. You give a little, you get a little, and it's very, you only get out of it what you put in. And that goes for language learning as a whole, obviously. Another version of this is group lessons. This is kind of like a half step more intense, more accountable, because it is synchronistic as in it is in real time, but it's also with a group of people. And it doesn't require as much effort and energy because let's say you're in a group class with 5 other language learners and you are getting the feedback of your fellow students, and also you're just kind of like listening and paying attention, and it's not one-on-one focus. It doesn't require that much effort or energy, and it can be a nice like stepping stone to one-on-one private classes or language exchange, which I'm going to talk about next, without the effort and without, you know, having to find time in your schedule. Because generally with group classes, like the classes are already scheduled. You just have to join in before all the spots are gone. Like it's a lot lower effort because the class is scheduled and theme is chosen and the level is chosen and the goal is chosen. You just got to show up. So think like Lingoda, think Babel Live, group classes like that. You go in, you find a class that kind of works with your schedule and kind of works with the goals that you have, and you just kind of show up and, I don't know, maybe it works for you. Now, the final step on the spectrum of language apps for accountability is that one-on-one accountability. And this can be language teachers, this can be a language exchange partner. So you're having conversations with a native speaker of the language and you're exchanging your languages. Either way, this last form is high risk, but also high reward. What does this mean? So let's say you are seeking out a language exchange partner on an app like HelloTalk or Tandem. Basically, when you sign up for these apps, you will set up your target language and your native language, and you'll essentially get bombarded by potential language exchange partners. You'll get like 100 different messages, or at least I do. And generally the way it works is out of, let's say, 100 messages that you get, most of them will not get past a certain level. It can take a minute to find a language exchange partner that you enjoy and that you can rely on. But once you find that partner or that group of partners, it is a top tier form of accountability, because let's say you decide to meet up once a week on Thursdays. You show up on Thursdays. It's much easier to do it because you have one person relying on you. It's not like a group lesson on Lingoda where if you cancel, it doesn't really affect anybody else. It doesn't really matter. If you have that one-on-one language exchange with a HelloTalk partner, that is a lot of accountability because it's a relationship that you have and or are building. So high risk, high reward. And if you want to go a step further for even more accountability, you find a language teacher, a one-on-one private tutor. And I say this is a step higher because you are paying for it. You are not only investing your time and your energy, but you're also investing your money, which can really, really up the ante for your accountability. A lot of us are most highly motivated when we have money on the line. It's not always the case, it's not the case for everybody, but in certain situations, it can definitely be a lot of motivation for certain language learners. So for example, if you are meeting with a language teacher on verbling, again, link below in the description. You might be able to cancel or reschedule your meeting with your teacher, but only up to a certain point. So once you get to a certain point, say 24 hours beforehand, you are stuck. You have to show up or else you are losing that money. Talk about motivation. Even when it gets to the 11th hour and you really don't want to, but you show up just because you're out 20 bucks. If you don't show up, and then at the end of the lesson, you're like, oh wow, I'm really glad I did that. That is definitely a thing that can happen. And if that is a motivational form of accountability for you, then I would highly recommend it. Or if you're just looking for that level of accountability and are not sure if that's something that will keep you motivated or not, I would really recommend trying it out. If you have the time and the emotional labor and you were just looking for somebody to keep you on track, investing in somebody else's time to teach you the language can really be that extra step that you need to keep yourself motivated. Now, one last thing I want to mention in this video before we close out this topic. The level of accountability that you need and are able to handle at any given time is going to change throughout your journey. And this can depend on a lot of things. This can depend on your skill level. This can depend on what's going on in your life, your energy, any number of things. But if you find, for example, that you are very highly motivated by a one-on-one language teacher, and so that works for you, but then something else comes up in life and you just don't have the energy or the time to focus on it, that doesn't mean that you're not motivated enough. It just means that there are other things coming up, and that's totally fine. Now, in that case, you might want to pull back a little bit and focus more on like a polygloss level of accountability, or even just a daily streak. All options are perfectly valid and can change from time to time in your life. Sometimes you need that external consistency and accountability to keep you motivated in your language learning, and sometimes you don't. That can also change. That intrinsic motivation goes up and down. It's not a consistent flow. There are peaks and valleys to motivation. So maybe if you're at the bottom of that valley of your motivation, go for a language teacher. But if you're at the peak of that motivation, just stick with the daily streak. All forms of accountability and language apps are perfectly valid. It's about finding which piece fits your puzzle at any given time or phase of your life and your language learning. Now, I hope this video gave you something to think about your own language learning. Let me know in the comment section below how much accountability you think you need or don't need for your own motivation. And now that you understand what level of accountability you need to keep you motivated in your language learning, I really recommend going to the link below in the description and checking out my language app search, which you can use to search for that particular level of motivation. Because yes, I mentioned a few language apps in this video and in the description box below, but I haven't mentioned all of them, and there are new ones popping up every single day. So I really recommend you check out my language app search below. And if you found this video valuable, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new one all about how to learn a language every Wednesday. Make sure to share your thoughts in the comment section below. See you there.